Now we are going to try to flow seamlessly right into our tailpiece. Got my basic shape cut out, mostly trimmed up. I think it'll be alright with what we got on the overhang. I have already drawn the ridges onto the inside because we're going to do the same technique to get our ridges. So this one has 3 rows in the middle and then 2 on each tab. This one, the tailpiece, is sort of a combination of a couple of the shapes because we got that. This, first of all, is pretty dished already. Right out of the sled, the tail pad is what I would say perfect. You don't need to hammer this out at all unless you're trying to get dents out. You know, planishing as they say. So we are going to need to put an angle on this though. These tabs have got to come forward. So I'm going to do that first. Lock in the sides and then go ahead and do my ridges last. In theory, you could do the ridges first. I wouldn't. I think if you're comfortable with that, there's no reason you can't recover from any mistakes you might make, but I'm just going to go ahead and do this first. Because there's a natural kind of curve to this bend, this fits perfectly with the kind of curve we got going on here on the anvil itself. So we're just going to give it the old tappa, tappa, tappa. And work our a little crooked there. That's why you don't go too hard too fast. Or just hammer that right back out. I'm going to use this back side a little bit broader over here. Start to seal that edge just for no other reason than to continue the line that it makes right on down. So we got it started. You can even give it a little help, you know, with the hand once you get your crease set. So just subtle, yeah, it's not actually too bad. Actually, leaning toward leaving this alone at this point. Leaning toward it, almost never do. Alright, now the other side. Got the main body of the crease again, a little off. Full off my game right now. But nothing you can't hammer back straight. Try again. Hammer the top to flatten out that part, hammer the side to reestablish a new line. So, alright. So it's a pretty subtle bend, but it is a creased, clear bend. So I think that's pretty close to what I want. Just gotta realize it's going around, you know, the old tailpipe. Don't want it too wide, don't want it too tight. Again, you know how big you are. That's all you really need to worry about. So I'm going to hit the old fast forward as I seal the edges, and then we'll start the ridges. Just another quick note to follow up on something I had mentioned a little while back. Once you get your extreme corners and they start getting tighter, you start getting the metal that, like I said, has to go somewhere, and it starts doing that. It's hideous, but it's nothing. Quick snips from the old tin snips can't fix. Yeah, really, you could even pre-cut diagonals into every corner so that when you hammer them out, they actually turn normal, if you were feeling brave. So, I say, it's still going to make that more even when I take the angle grinder later during the cleaning phase. Don't like that ugly edge, so we're just going to grind it and even it right out. Alright, ready to do some ridges. Super heavy. Took a little pause just to highlight my low lights here. As you can see, the process I used kind of went off the rails this time. I don't know if I'm just not paying good enough attention or if it's because it's so curved that it starts shifting as I rotate. But yeah, this is not as pretty as the last set we did on the front ab pad. It's not even as pretty as the ones we did on the side, which I was really pleased with. So at this point, you've got to have yourself a little conversation and just think, is this good enough for what I want to do, or do you want to hammer it all back out and start all over? The only drawback to doing it all over again is that this metal has now been worked, and if you hammer it out, it's going to get worked again to flatten it, and when you hammer it anew, it's going to be a little weaker. You're going to be a little more likely for a punch through. Or if you want, which is kind of what I did on this side, you can go back in at a new angle and try to straighten out the lines. Fortunately, like I said, this is going to be painted camo. Any of the scrapes you see are going to make it look better, and you're just not going to get a scrape where somebody's going to see that. So I hate to keep leaning on that as a crutch that it's going to get covered up. Don't sweat it. I mean, it's up to you how much of a perfectionist you want to be, but I am going to do my best to clean this up a little bit, but I am not going to hammer it flat and start all over. I am going to take my time a little bit, not feel like I have to rush so much, so I'm not going to subject y'all to having to watch me go through this slowly. But I'll kick it back on when I feel like I got something worthwhile. Alright, a good lesson in slowing the heck down. You don't have to do everything right away. The middle one there is probably the best of the three. That's the one I did after I turned the cameras off. I figured I would turn it back on, even though I'm not happy with it yet, because I'm just going to show some of the cleanup. I mean, obviously hammering it out flat is an option, but you risk weakening your material. So I'm just going to try to clean up the edges using the short side here, try to do some of those blowouts, straighten them back up, and if I have to, busting the chisel out right on top of it. So that's the worst area, is I think this blowout here, not really a blowout because it didn't penetrate, but I just mean it got really off kilter. So I'm going to try to put some of that has the little bubble off it right back where it was. Got to be real gentle because you don't want to, really want to crease it. That's why I'm also thinking use this, because you don't want there to be a line almost highlighting. But that's where it all went wrong. So now you see a lot of hammer marks there, but you don't necessarily see the bulge. So you can do that a little bit and clean up some of these strays. Some of it, that is actually an imperfection in the aluminum that was gashed before we started working. That might even give it character. That may make it look used and, you know, like you've seen some action on Faraway Worlds or whatever. But, I don't know. That one's okay like it is. Just not going to brag about showing people my butt exactly. But, I mean, overall, we got the good shape we wanted. We got a rigid shape we wanted. It still is not my favorite one that we've done in this series, but I'm going to use it. I'm not going to scrap it and start all over, because I think overall it's a nice piece. So yeah, I'm going to run with that. So a lot of these same skills that we used in flaring up the bits on the shoulder bells, flaring these in, and hammering our ridges is the exact same techniques we're going to use for the lobster plates on the back of the helmet. So I'm actually going to pause the video and go ahead and bring those out, because sorry guys, I kind of cheated. I did those already, which I'm happy about now, because if this is the mood I'm in today, then I didn't want to butcher those things, so I was actually pretty happy with the way they turned out. It's the exact same technique we just used on this. Let me go grab those. All right. So the lobster plates, the first one is just a naturally curved, maybe even okay right out of the chute, off the sled. A lot of times you see they're a little more curved than this. There's a photo of continuity shot of Frost's helmet on the inside. I'm sure most of you have seen it, where to me it looks flatter in the middle, curved at the end, but it's real subtle. Hammer down the edges real subtle, put a line right down the middle. I've already drilled and dremeled this out to accept straps. This is a very simple shape using just the techniques there. If you're able to do the front ab pad and the tail pad, then this is a piece of cake. This is going to be the easiest thing ever. I actually do recommend doing these last, so you do get used to it. Those other ones, this is going to be more visible than any of that stuff. Being on your head, people are more likely to notice that. So when you feel like comfortable, like you've perfected the technique, then I would start these smaller pieces. Even though they're littler, they're actually, to me, more important to make it look good. And then the lower plate is just slightly more complicated. It's like the exact opposite of this. Whereas we have our subtle curvature in the middle, instead of turning the pieces in at a ridge, we wanted to turn them out. So the same way I did with the shoulder tabs, putting them in the vise and bending it out, flattening that out, putting it in, flattening it, bending it out, so you've got a nice curve and then it gets flat for the ends, and then you can seal your shape, hammer the edges down, and put your ridges exactly like we did for the tailpipe, for the top lobster plate, tailpipe. I keep calling it tailpipe. The tail plate and the ab plate. So these ridges, these are all the parts that are going to use that, and they all use the exact same technique. So like I say, sorry I didn't show every little step on these, but this is nothing new. This is not a new technique to anything that we haven't already done on multiple pieces already. So hopefully you guys are able to handle out a hammer and handle all that. So good luck.